All right, I'm going to jump right into another video here. It is my day off. I want to make some more progress. Like I said, I do feel some resistance because I haven't really been writing in a while, and writing is hard when you actually have to sit down and do it. So I think in my ideal world, I would have all of these different hooks for myself. So, for example, I love filling out this 8x8. I just started doing it for a whole new script the other day, literally based on a dream. That was an idea. And this to me is this beautiful structure. It helps me kind of figure out what story I'm telling. I would love to have a bunch of different things like that, where if I don't actually want to sit down and do this, I have this, and I always have a way to get back in, instead of just like, here's a blank page, good luck. So I think what I'm going to do for today is I want to do a quick kind of overview of the story, because I'd imagine this kind of looks like a lot down here. But then I'm going to just try to write as much as possible in however much time I have here. So, first and foremost, if you are following along with me and you want to kind of understand at least a bit of what I'm doing, I would recommend watching the original movie. The sequel, or other remake from the 60s or so, is this beautiful Technicolor adventure, but it deviates quite a bit. In a lot of different ways from the story. I think it's still largely in the spirit of it. It's very apologetic to our main guy, as we should come to expect. But the first one is some of these like scene for scene, line for line. Certainly overall structure, very, very faithful to the book. So I would say if you watch the first movie, you could follow along with me just fine, and you'd be similarly, hopefully, delighted to know that there are these other scenes that are in there that both movies miss. But that being said, I know we have this big grid here, so why don't I try to give a summary here? So we start off in the perspective of the Venables. This is the last name of our protagonist, Sabra. She is watching her husband give a big speech to the family, Venables being her family again, about his time on the run. This is the time when they were given land to go and claim stakes of in new land to the west of what was the kind of standard American territory during the 1800s. So he's talking about how incredible it was. So many people gathered together at the shot of a gun. Everyone runs and tries to stake their claim with a flag. He runs into a woman named Dixie, who's very brave, riding on her own horse. She ends up kind of swindling him out of his claim, and but he comes back and says it was the most amazing adventure. We have to go back. Her family is, of course, how outrageous. They're very Southern in style, even though they're I think in Kansas now, but they're very against this. She's like, no, I'm going with my husband. He's amazing. And we get an introduction here to how he is this very suave, beautiful, attractive man that she is very much in love with. So they have a young son named Cimarron. And yeah, so that's kind of these first two chunks together. The movie poster moment I have here is the run. Now, that being said, I ended up changing this to where I think I might get rid of all of this and just start with American Women Go Along. That was my last video. That's where we start with her friend, and she's saying, I'm going to go. And Mother Bridget's like, oh, okay, so he's going for funsies. Got it. And there's this kind of line about how American women always go along. He'll make it like the old in no time, which I think is an important theme here. So that's, as you can see, I wrap up this first line here. They head out. They make their way to the west. Turns out that stowing away with them is a young black boy named Isaiah, who worked for the family back home, and he comes along with them for the ride. Sim is taking turns between the two carts. He spends some time with his dad. He spends some time with his mom. His mom is horrified to hear that he has been learning some stories of Native American abuses of the Native Americans and things like that. Becoming a sympathizer, as you might summarize, to their story. So this is kind of an introduction to her discomfort. We've already seen it here, her discomfort with Native Americans, but there's more of it there with her son. But I think that's an important introduction, so maybe we'll jump into that soon. One thing I like about this story is that she is controlling one of these carts. Eventually, I think Isaiah even takes over one of them, her husband holding or controlling the other. And eventually she's taught to how to kind of relax with it. So she's being jostled around so roughly and getting bounced around, but eventually she learns to relax. And I think that's kind of like a metaphor for the whole story, is the way that she is very much jostled around. She could have stayed comfortable at home the whole time, but she eventually learns to move with the jostling. So I do like the idea of keeping that moment in there. Later, Sim gets lost. She panics. She eventually finds him with some criminals, some bandits and things like that. They turn him over just fine. She's just very worried. Eventually, they run into her husband, and they're all chummy. But then later, they run into the police, just her husband and her son, and their party. And they're like, "Hey, have you seen the bandits?" And our main boy Yancey's like, "No, no, I haven't." She's like, "Why are you protecting these boys?" They get into town. There's a chaotic first night where she is just like, "How am I ever going to sleep in this ruffian town?" It's very, very rough, kind of classic cowboy ruffian saloon type town at that first night. And then eventually they do start to get settled and they put up their sign for their newspaper, which will be a recurring theme throughout. I could probably, yeah, anyway. Eventually, you could probably control F my script and see a lot of references to newspaper. So these are our first two chunks. Maybe I'll even just start there and see what we can get done of those two sections. So we have the scene that we just wrote. Then we have leaving the Venables. I think I started creating kind of these blocks here. So I'm going to just kind of start to fill these in. So there, I'm just kind of reading here from this first page. Hopefully you can see it too. I'll zoom in a little bit. There was a lunatic week preparing to their depart. Lunatic week preceding their departure. I think there's a funny part of it. How the mother is like hemming and hawing and threatening to be sick because of it, but eventually she realizes she's not getting all that attention for it, which is kind of funny. Don't, Mama, you don't understand. Yancey says there's very little society, and it's all quite rough and unsettled, wild almost. That needn't prevent you from remembering your lady, I hope, unless you're planning to be one of those hags in a sunbonnet with no teeth that Yancey seems to have taken such a fancy to. So I haven't really introduced her mom yet because I think I'm going to cut that first scene. Otherwise, we'll get a good taste from her there. But I do think this kind of stuff is funny. But honestly, if we are cutting that first scene, it seems like they should just kind of be on the road, honestly. But then that takes away from my scene later where I want to have them come back home to see mom. So I think I'm going to have something in here with Mama Sabra. Sabra's mama. So let's see here. Pact stood waiting before the Venable house. I think this is where I'd kind of ideally start this scene. I wish I could get rid of this sidebar here. Let's move that back over a little bit. Okay. Wagons packed stood waiting before the Venable house. Perhaps never in the history of settling in the West did a woman go pioneering in such a costume. She'd driven horses all her life, so she stepped up agilely from the ground to the hub, from the hub to the wheel top, and perched herself high on the wagon seat, gathered up the reins, deftness and outward composure. Her eyes were enormous, her pale face paler. She wore the last year's best gray cheviot, lined, bone, basked, and though plain for its day, braided all the way down the front an elaborate pattern of curly cues. Her gray straw bonnet was trimmed only with a puff of velvet and a bird. So it's like this kind of gets into a lot of different things. His eyes were huge with excitement. So maybe it was probably better is if I plan ahead which scene I'm going to write. I reread through this on my own, and then I highlight in my own book which parts I want to extrapolate out. I think that'd probably be a good idea. So that being said, let's continue with this overview. I think this is still helpful, again, just for getting my head back into this. And then I think I'll pick, after going through, I'll pick like maybe bold the next couple scenes I think are most important. And then when I have some time, kind of spend some time actually going through each individual page of the book, like I did for this one of the scene we just did. I had a lot already highlighted of what made it seem very obvious, like, okay, there's my dialogue, that's what that's going to look like. So let's just keep going through the outline then. I think this is going to be an important one, but this is one where I definitely want to have highlighted it so I know, because really this is only a couple of chapters worth of the actual book. Let's actually check. So if this is 4, we just wrote from chapter 3. Let's find out when our next chapter is. 5 ends at what? Isaiah. Okay. So really everything from here to here is going to be a single chapter of the book. Oopsies, didn't mean to do that. So that's not a lot for me to read through, but maybe not as fun for me to just sit reading on camera. So I almost want to color these a certain way. Like this will essentially be... I don't know. Can we bold it? Let's do... No? Formatting? Something? I don't know. Clicking on it. Alright, well, anyway, that's going to be up to chapter 4. Or 4, that's going to be all of chapter 4. So, in any case, let's see here. Or, I should say, no, sorry. This Isaiah. I have 2 things that just say Isaiah. That's not especially helpful. I should add some detail here. This Isaiah. So... This is chapter 4. Ooh, that's a little bit more intimidating. Um, Okay, but in any case, we talked all the way through to the newspaper sign. So now, Yancey's first story, he wants to be the story of Pegler. He was the prior newspaperman in that town, and he was murdered. So Yancey's got this great idea, and he said, "Is like I want my first story, my first paper, to be who murdered Pegler. It's going to be great." And everyone's like, "You're just going to get yourself murdered." So he starts sniffing around town. One of the guys is like, "Stick to your lawyer," and Yancey, because that's his other job, is he's going to be a lawyer, wearing many hats, and so there's a funny part about her saying like, you just quote the Bible at me when you want to have permission for something that you're already going to do. Like, don't do that. So there's a funny line because he's very well read. It's very romantic, but it also starts to drive Saber crazy. Like, she just kind of starts to be like, you are full of shit. So he he wants that permission. So let's see here. Permission to gamble. I'm guessing that still has to do with Pegler, unless we're talking about church yet, which we are. Yeah. Okay. So I need to be more clear here. Gambling house. So they basically come to the idea that like, hey, we should have church in town. The biggest place that could possibly hold us is actually the gambling house. So Yancey, why don't you go over and ask permission? Which is a very funny scene. And then okay, here we go. I know what this means. So then here, this is Isaiah stows away. Once they finally are going to church, Isaiah tries to go to church with them. He dresses up like Yancey in the best he can cobble together, and he struts along behind him. And so Saber, is kind of mortified by this, and Yancey's like, "Oh, come on, it's the highest form of flattery." But eventually sends him home and is like, "Hey, I need you to play. I need you to." Slip there. I need you to protect the house because we could have, what if some bad guys come and burn it down? And so by the time he sends Isaiah away, Saber's like, well, were you just saying that to get him out of here? Or are people actually going to burn down the house? So let's not go to church anymore because someone's going to burn down our house. So she's very nervous. They get to church. There are a lot of different people in church, all the rowdiest cowboys and the good folk of town. But also, Dixie Lee gets reintroduced here. Again, she's just mentioned briefly up here in the storytelling aspect. So I think that's the only thing is I'd love this to not be her first time that or if it is the first time we see her, not the first time we've heard about her, but maybe there can be, I think I can just have that in dialogue. And there's probably a similar something in the movie where it's like, that's the girl I went on the run with, and her being like, well, stop looking at her, something like that. So Dixie Lee is introduced. She is the town harlot. She is a baddie, and she comes to church, and the other women of the town clutch at their pearls. And so the other day I was saying that phrase, and I must have used the wrong verb, because I was correcting it. Clutching pearl. Yeah, it's clutching pearls, right? Anyway, grasping at pearls, clutching pearls. They sing a song together at church because they can't really think of any hymns right away. But they're like, "What's a song that everyone knows?" And there's a song, "Who Were You at Home?" So that's a great little moment of the town together. He gives a sermon, and right at the end of the sermon, he's about to reveal who killed Pegler. He drops his Bible. He ducks down. Bang! If someone tries to kill him, he fires back and kills the killer of Pegler. So it's a great sequence. That's why I like this structure, because this is just kind of one set piece of many, but it has its own beginning, middle, and end. Finding out who killed Pegler, and we find out who killed Pegler. The end, kind of a thing. Over here, women reading the papers. This is where Saber's starting to first have her hand in the newspaper. So she's like, hey, I know, like, we don't exactly have to have a gossip column, but can we have something in here that's for women? And then we get to see a little bit of how, like, this world is built for men, and I think the juxtaposition there is going to be good. Like, it's rowdy, it's dirty, it's messy, or whatever. But that just kind of comparing the two worlds. The women trying to make it like the old, so to speak, and the men in town that are enjoying the ways that it's not. We have her birth of Donna, her daughter, and that, like I was saying in the last video, she gets motivated. She's like, I'm going to wallpaper the whole house, and it's going to be beautiful. And then she passes out. But she's very motivated. There's a moment where Saul is harassed. He is a Jewish person in town, and he ends up having this kind of commiserative moment with Dixie, where she talks about how, she wouldn't have wanted to do other jobs. She doesn't want to be like some school marm or something. Like, she's happy where she's at, even though they're both kind of the outcasts. She goes home to Wichita. This is super important. This is one I already wrote. So maybe, what I'll do is, just for funsies, is I'm going to highlight the ones that I've already done, because that's going to feel really good as I start to fill this in. These again I might get rid of, but okay. Home to Wichita, super important, because she's going home for the first time, seeing how much she's changed, seeing how much she's still very much beholden to the opinion of her family. Very relatable there. And then she comes back home to finding out that there was a shootout, and she's there to kind of take care of her husband, who's like, "Honey, make all these people go away," because they're just wanting to get the story. And she forgets how mad she is at him. She's like, "Come here, baby, I got you." And what's funny about this is that she comes into like an empty town, empty train station. It's very spooky. Just hears the tick 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 Morse code, and we never see the shootout. We just hear about it after the fact, and it's her from her perspective. Both movies give us a classic Hollywood Western shootout. So taking the man's story instead of the woman's story. But in any case, as we come to the end of this section, I think is super important. We start to have this idea that Yancey has never stayed in the same place for 5 years or longer, or something like that. And at this point, we're coming up on 4 or 5 years, and so he's restless. He's out more. He's drinking a lot. He's eventually he leaves town because he finds out there's going to be another run. He tries to excuse it like this is the biggest thing that's ever happened in the history of America, but really he just wants another adventure, and he does not come back for 5 years. So beginning of this section, we have Dixie very proudly going through town with her ladies, and the proper ladies of the town are very scandalized by this. But there's also a lot of gossip about, like, oh, I heard Yancey settled down with a Native American woman. Oh, I heard he was killed. Oh, I heard. And this is very agonizing, for our girl Sabra to just hear all the gossip around town, because she tries to be very prim and proper. We get to see Saul succeeding. He's built up his business from like a little cart that he sold things off of to an actual brick and mortar, and eventually becomes a skyscraper by the end of the book. So we're going to get to see him succeed and grow. Sadly, there is this tragic portion of the death of Isaiah. Isaiah gets a Native American woman pregnant, and the tribe murders both of them, including the child, which is really heartbreaking. I did do some research into that. My fiance made a good point, which is don't write about this horrifying act unless it has any kind of historic basis. The villains in this particular story of this moment being Native American, and I couldn't find a historic basis for it. There is basis for beatings, maybe hangings, which of course is horrible, but not the type of extensive slow death torture that's described in the book. So I can see the purpose that it has in the overarching story, but I think I might soften this a little bit from what it is explicitly in the book, just out of historical accuracy, that there isn't any record of this kind of torture being perpetrated for someone of color that had procreated with someone from the tribe. So that's a tricky one. That's a messy thing. But as you can imagine, both movies cut it. One movie doesn't even have the character of Isaiah, and one movie kills him during the shootout in kind of an accidental, not friendly fire, but accidental shot kind of situation. So that's sad. But I think that's it. What it ties into the story is the way that she has her beliefs that are problematic, and Sabra is prejudiced against the Native Americans, and so if they killed someone that mattered to her, that can kind of harden her heart to it. So again, we're not condoning her behavior, we're explaining it within the context of what we're given in this story. And I think my biggest thing is not so much highlighting racism so much as not cutting it out like the other movies. I think trying to protect the white hero as being flawless when they have a lot of flaws in the book is a mistake, especially when it comes to race. So that's going to be something I deal with as I get to that point. Yancey gets to return 5 years later, a war hero, having fought with the Rough Riders and all of this stuff, and brag about his time. And the annoying thing is that all the while, which is what's a good starting point for this here, is our main girl has been trying to get Dixie kicked out of town. And so she finally has the trial set up. No one's even going to defend Dixie. And then all of a sudden Yancey comes to town. He's like, I'm sorry, what? What's going on? Oh, Dixie's trial? Oh, no one's defending her? Okay, I'm defending her. And Saber's like, are you kidding me? You're gone for 5 years and now you're going to undo everything I've been doing? So I'm sure I've said this before, but like when I read that part of the book, I was like, oh, he's right, but he's an asshole, which I think is kind of a reoccurring theme. He can be the more he has more correct opinions from a historical perspective, but he's not a good person at the same time. So here there's a little part about how Yancey might be able to go for governor. I do want to include it. Both movies really blow that part up. She ends up becoming a governess, and never becomes a governor. But both movies make that a big part of it. But the other thing I care about in that part is the fact that she's like, my family will finally stop giving me shit because I married this guy that they think is a nobody. He became a governor of a state, so take that, family. So she wants it for that reason more than anything, and he's kind of like, nah, don't wanna. Hey, Saul, you should do it. And they're like, yeah, okay. Yeah, like someone's going to vote for me. But anyway, so I think that's an important beat, even if it's brief. Uh, Sim and Ruby, but also we can have a moment connecting with Saul because he's going to be important in about 2 seconds. Sim and Ruby, Sim is falling in love with the Native American girl, Ruby, who works in their household. They go off to have their own celebration with a little bit of drugs. And the mom is like, don't leave, don't go. She tries to have her own women's party. Their new thing is like pineapple and marshmallow. And it finally gets through the party. Yancey comes back and she's like, I didn't have time to make dinner. Today has just been hell. Here's what we had for our party. And he basically just like laughs and laughs and laughs at it and then walks off down the street and isn't seen again for years. And so I think that's just like this perfect example of this theme where it's like, yeah, pineapple and marshmallow, that's silly. Maybe it doesn't even taste good, but she was trying to have a little bit of like a society party in this town and trying to have a little bit of home. And he laughs in her face effectively and walks out down the street as if he deserves some 4-course dinner. And he's never seen again for a long time, I should say. He's not seen again for a long time. And that sucks. Then she asks Saul in the middle of the night, it's like, please help me go rescue my son. They go to the tribe. He's zonked out. He's very high, very happy, and they bring him home. So she's at the end of that chapter. I wish I could find it, but I know we're pretty far in at this point. I don't even know what I would search. I'm just going to pick a chapter and see where we're at. He's got... I don't remember what that is. I think it's a big poem, but okay, that's the Saul line. He's got a good zinger for the people that are harassing him. I don't take money for killing a man, so that's the shootout. All right, well, let's just keep scrolling. Let's get kind of caught up to where we're at in the book, just in case I need to reference anything else. Let's see. I can remember it better from the end of the chapters. Death of Isaiah right there. Okay, we're getting caught up. I am feeling good that like my outline here is very accurate. It's obviously in the right order. Like it makes me feel like if I do this faithfully, I'll have done the book faithfully, which is nice. Dixie Lee, not guilty. So that gets us up to here. Da-da-da. All right, we're getting there. I wanted to read the line at the end of when she rescues Sim with Saul. We're getting to Ruby, so it could be this chapter. Yeah, she's kind of freaked out. She's like, why are you guys singing? She finds out that Yancey has done drugs with the Native Americans multiple times. I always think of that like joke that floated around from Seventh Heaven where the mom was like, I've done pot. And the husband's like so scandalized. But anyways, I also think that that's like a good moment and annoying because it's like, of course you've gone off and gotten high with your buddies, Yancey. Like you don't take anything seriously. But anyways, this is the line I was looking for. So she actually she gets back home with Saul. She gives him a kiss on the hands. She got his hand to her lips and kissed it. The sound of the hooves died away on the still morning air. That's how late they get back with Sim. She looked down at Sim. She thought, I will take a bath, and then I will have some coffee too. Yancey has gone again, has left me. I know that. How do I know it? Well, nothing more can happen to me now. I have had it all. I have borne it. Nothing more can happen to me now. So I think that's a great line. Sorry, my nose is itchy. I think a lot of women can probably relate to that line of like, you have no idea what I've been through, like what I have borne, right? The things that our mothers put up with and deal with, that all the long nights and things, the the holidays and everything. Anyways, thinking my own memories here, not as a mother, but having had one time. So here, getting to our next thing, oil. That's a big shift. That gets us a little bit into the future. Actually, a good deal into the future. Actually, I don't know. I think Donna's already of a certain age here. But in any case, oil breaks. A lot of money comes into town. A lot of mayhem. And eventually, Donna is starting to scheme about getting married to the richest man in town. She basically goes off to school on the East Coast, comes back, and is like, this is a hick town. Like, at least I'm going to marry a rich man, so I don't have to deal with all this. And her mom's like, don't be a hoe about this. And she's like, no, really, I'm going to. And they have a little bit of a conflict there. She is now, let's see. So Yancey comes back finally. So I think it's like 5 years every time. He comes back. He's been off searching for gold in Alaska. So how fun for him. He's got a couple little kernels in his hand. And he wants to write this big explosive piece about the Native Americans. And she's like, no, I've worked really hard to keep this thing going. You're not just gonna blow it up with your think piece. And he's like, as long as my name is above that door, I'm still the editor. And she just has this sad moment of being like, and I just knew then like I was never gonna take his name off of it. So, but what she does also realize is that every time he comes back, he's a little bit older, he's a little bit grayer, he's a little bit more grizzled, and not in a flattering way. You know, he's an alcoholic, presumably. She talks about how he needs like 3 fingers of whiskey to even stop being sick in the morning, to stop shaking. There's a really sad section here where Dixie adopts a little girl. She's very happy in her older age, older being relative. She's not that old, and the town finally, after see the aligning nature here, they finally they get the baby, they get the little girl taken away from her, and Dixie's so devastated that within 6 months she's dead. So that is heartbreaking. It's like 2 sentences in the book, but I'm gonna have to give it some weight because I think Dixie as a character deserves more. She's after I watched the first movie, she's the one that really stood out to me too. Was like, this is really interesting. The husband's relationship with her. They don't do anything, but like they still have this connection and this loyalty, and they protect each other in a way. Whereas the newer movie, they just end up like kissing in a house together, and he's like, now Dixie, and I just think that that's messy, and I don't like it. And then it's like, you just kissed her, like you've already done wrong. Whereas it's like it's a tension in this other bit of the story, but also just out of fairness to her, I want to give her some more there. Native Americans have gotten very wealthy. There's a funny like description of it where it's like they drove their cars into a ditch and then they went and bought another car. Donna does end up getting married to the richest man in town, Mr. Tracy, and then eventually by the end of the section, Sim is getting married to Ruby. So tying back in from our last chunk, Yancey happens to be around for this section, but he's getting married. Yancey's thrilled about it, and Sabra is sickened by it, and she's almost like, I wish I had never found him way back when he got lost this far back, which is a very sad thought. And I don't know how to communicate that with a movie because you can't say the thoughts, but we'll get there when we get there. Now as we're getting towards our end here, she is a governess. Donna has a beautiful house where she had these big portraits painted of Sim's children now. So she's got grandchildren. So again, a couple of years from here to here, they have, I think, Saber had said, like, I don't want those in my house, they're creepy. So in this scene, they can be walking through Donna's basically mansion and seeing those portraits of the grandchildren. So we get some plot exposition there. She gives a speech about how these tough women made this city what it is. We get to see Saul at the head of a skyscraper, very successful. There's talk of a statue being put up in town, and they want to interview Sabra, so they think it's going to be about her as the brave settler of the West, and they'd ask her about her life, and they ask her about her husband's life. This is where, if I were every other Hollywood movie, I would start the movie here and then have her flashback to tell the story from the beginning, but I hate that trope, so I'm not going to. Turns out it's an unveiled statue of Yancey, and it's a patronizing one at that, where he's leading the Native American forward, so it's kind of this like gut punch moment, which I think is great. As we go forward, she is doing some politicking. She is trying to clean up the town because of all the people that came in because of the oil rush. There's just a lot of ruffians, and there's a lot of mess and crime and all this stuff. She ends up getting a ride with someone who's like a young engineer, and she's like, this is what my son should have been. Classic parents, right? She's going to one of these shanty towns. She's interviewing people. There's someone who's in prison, and there's a nitroglycerin explosion. And that's something that's introduced right back here. So I have to remember to mention that because they talk about the oil, the stuff that they use to explode the ground to get the oil out is extremely dangerous. And when they're driving within these cars, if they take a wrong turn, it could just kill people and explode all over. So that's what happens here. She finds out that someone had basically caught the barrel to protect others and is dying because of it. They say his name is Old Yance, so she's like, what? Turns out Yancey, who left however long ago, has just been living on the outskirts of town, a complete nobody, and it's very sad. He's basically dying in her arms, and she's like, oh, Sabra, this incredible woman. And she's just like, sleep, my boy. It's this dramatic ending, but it's a very important ending, and Of course, the second one changes it, so he gets to die a war hero or some shit. But thankfully, the first movie keeps it. Although still plenty sympathetic to him. I just think it's important that he dies in obscurity. Basically, he's fortunate he gets to die in her arms, but like he chose to leave his family so many times and just be on the outskirts of town when she's like living in relative comforts. They've got a lovely home, keeping his talent, keeping everything going, and so he just like I don't know. It's just kind of a scary future we could kind of imagine for any character. But here she is with him dying in his arms. She closed them gently. She forgave him everything. Quite simply, all unknowing, she murmured through her tears the very words of Solvig: "Sleep, my boy, my dearest boy." There's this reference to Peer Gynt here. I only know a couple songs of that. I think it's a whole show, but like bum 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 bum, Mountain King, bum 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 bum, and there's some other really good ones. But anyway, I'm sure I could probably find a good song to have as my like reference song for that scene. It's a little more fitting. I'll listen to the album after this. So that's just a highlight of getting us back into things, getting into the overview outline here. Again, I'm probably going to watch, I know I watched the movies with my fiance. I'll probably watch them again soon, and maybe I can show her this too, get her thoughts on it. I think it's a good breakdown based on our keywords here. And I think what I'll do is maybe let this simmer for a little bit, Cimarron, and then decide, okay, I really want to go boom, 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 whatever. Like maybe I could do some of this whole sequence, and knock it out. But I want to spend some more time in the book first, so it's really fresh, highlighted. I can come back and then just knock it out into pages. So I think that'll be my next plan. I work tomorrow, so if it's ever quiet, maybe I can read through those pages and come back to it and knock it out. I really want to keep my momentum going. I want to prove that I can sit down and actually get something done and not just be like, ooh, here's a new idea. Glass is always greener kind of thing. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. I know this may be a repeat if you've been watching all the videos. I'm sure when I wrote this out the first time, you're going to hear a lot of the same things. But it's good for me to recap and still kind of sit down and get back into it. So next time, hopefully, we'll be doing some more writing. We have, 13 pages here. A lot of it's just kind of blocking out the scenes, but still, sleep, my boy. There it is. Till next time.